Hi everyone, it is Monday. My name is Andy, and I'm going to get right into it because not only is it that UFO podcast, as you should know by now, on a Monday, I am joined by the wonderful Pavel from Psychoactivo podcast. Pavel, how are
Hello.
we?
How are you, man? How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was all right. It was so good that I was listening to myself on the live here because I've got the YouTube comments on my left-hand side and could hear my own wonderful voice. I am coffeeed up for this one, fighting off a little
Same,
bit of a...
same. With my little cup that everybody makes fun of in the
Quite right.
comments.
Quite right. I'm full on venti caramel macchiato. When you've got $28 million and counting coming through due to stuff like this, folks, keep those super chats coming. I said earlier, someone asked me how I was doing with the old 28 million. I said it was up to 33 because I Mr. P. Teal
Wasn't
keeps
it
giving me 100k super chats.
what wasn't it 28 mil like a few seconds ago? Now it's 33 in just like 20 seconds.
Pounds and dollars, Pavel. Pounds and dollars. Come on,
That's impressive. That's
keep
impressive,
up.
I gotta say.
Keep up. But yeah, it's been a good weekend. What about yours?
I went to a wedding on Friday. One of my really good childhood friends that is friend of the family got married. Fun fact, he just started working at Collins Aerospace, which is kind of Raytheon,
Mhm.
which is kind of interesting. I knew that information at the wedding actually, and I was pretty surprised. I was like, "Whoa!" So that was fun.
Has he signed any cool NDAs for working there?
I haven't talked to him yet. He wants to talk to me. Yeah, I haven't talked to him. He's very curious about the topic and everything, but you know, he just started working for one of those companies. So I bet I can't ask him much by this point. He already signed his contract and everything. So
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, man. The closest I have to that is a family member who worked in air traffic control, and I always feel weird saying they worked quite high up in air traffic control because air traffic controllers work high up in the air. By that I mean he was senior position, and yeah, talked about a couple of UFO things, nothing like major, but just more. Pilots would report them. They would fill in a form. It would go in a drawer, and then that was it
and
from there.
stay there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it stayed in said drawer. So yeah, but looking forward to this one. As always with the Mondays, we've had a few suggestions, Pavel, for different names, such as Magic Monday, but magic with a K. We have had there was a nice one about something for a Monday. Can't remember what
There
it
were
was.
songs created already.
Yeah, there's been music, like that's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It's nice though. It's a nice gesture, but it is weird.
What I might do is if we collate the music, because I know I've got a listener who asked me what we would like, and I know you've had one sent over. In a
Yeah.
couple of weeks, we could maybe play a couple of them at the end of one of the shows and be like,
Yeah, that'd be really
what do
cool.
you think? Same with the names. People are
Yeah.
like Monday Madness, Majestic Monday, and
You know that's one of the reasons why I don't really use my image in the thumbnails. I don't really like that, and the less I'm mentioned, the better. You know.
yeah,
So
probably a good thing.
if it's an intro song, like great beats and great sound is always welcome. But when it comes to lyrics and stuff, you gotta be very specific.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And listen, let's talk specifics. So let's talk UFOs, which is what we're here for.
Yes.
I want to selfishly start just briefly talk about the interview I done with Eric Davis a couple of days ago. That's gone down really well. So thank you to everyone who's checked
Very
that
good
out.
work. Very good work. Very wonderful interview.
I mean, it's light work, isn't it? Because for an hour and 40 minutes, I spoke for about 3.
Did you like get your feet up somewhere while you were talking to Eric? Like,
Like
oh, I can
I
just
shuffle a lot
relax.
anyway. Yeah, like do you know what? I don't feel I can relax because I do have to listen. And I'm glad there was one point in the interview, Eric lost his train of thought and he couldn't remember why he was saying something.
And you were
And
like, yes.
I rhymed off the last 3 things he said, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, cool." There are times I do zone out, and I kind of see myself like looking off to the side. But I normally I'm listening quite attentively. But I said to you, I had 2 versions of that interview written. I had
Yeah.
a really long detailed interview with questions, bullet points, follow-ups, places I might go, places that I'd like to go, places we might not go, quick fire rounds. I knew I had like 90 minutes with him, but I had a condensed version. And after about 3 minutes of the interview, I was like, yeah, I'm going to switch to the condensed one because
I think that the older people get, the more they want to talk,
Mm.
and it's a common trope in older people that they just like to talk a lot.
So let me just ask, because a few people are very kindly sending stuff in. David, $1 Million Mondays. I thought you would go with a wrestling theme, David. I like it. And never shying away from this. And here's someone who's put their hard-earned money to tell me I'm shit. No, they're not really, but Digital Birdie said Eric's a liar and a psychopath. Calling Bob Lazar the same. Did he not? He never called him a psychopath though. He had dinner
You
with
called him
Richard
a
Doty.
pathological liar.
Pathological liar. Yeah, that was the one.
That was yeah.
Psychopath's probably a bit far, Digital Birdie.
Yeah.
But look, I get it. I don't think there's anyone in this topic who has universal praise from everyone.
No. Everybody has haters.
Yeah, everybody has it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the more prominent these people are, the bigger the claims that they make, the more that can really rile up people. Whether it's because...
let's acknowledge having haters is kind of a stupid concept in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, I get people are frustrated. And a big theme for this show, Pavel, while we talk about the news on a Monday, I wanted to talk about claims in general. And I'll give a shout out to, was it Sammy on the YouTube the other day for the podcast, said she would, I think Sammy's female, said, talk about how frustrated we are at a lack of information available, stuff that can't be answered, NDAs, etc. And I thought, do you know what? It's a fair point, and it's going to kind of frame a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Just we've got Tim Gallaudet, former Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, on Jesse Michaels talking about Atlantis. Got a clip of that to show. Gary Nolan has now come out and done one of those videos, speaking directly to President Trump on social media. Matthew Brown, Jeff Nusatelli have been doing some work with Leslie Kean on the Anomalous Coalition AMA. So there's lots to talk about. And again, claims are going to build this up. And I think everyone's opinion is perfectly fair. Because at the end of the day, any one of these people, whether you want to go back to Lazar's 9 craft and 9 different hangars, if you want to go to David Grusch's Biologics and craft being retrieved, if you want to go to Elizondo's work with ATIP and what that program was, what it done, if you want to talk about Mellon's involvement in the background of any of this stuff, you can talk about it. But ultimately, we don't know. We can't prove for 100% anything that any of these people have said is 100% legitimate. And that doesn't even just mean they're lying. Grusch, for example, could have been fed disinformation at some point.
Yeah. And to be fair, he still has the strongest case out of everybody because of his credentials and everything. But at the end of the day, he's still trying to get that evidence because there is no convincing evidence other than the claims. And that is like becoming one of the major hurdles in all of this. And I don't know. What do you think?
2026, go on social media anytime and just scroll through a feed for a couple of minutes and you will see the wildest claims. That's not just UFOs. That's like, we both watch football. So football, soccer, NFL, NBA, WNBA, need I say at the moment? Let's not go there. But I do follow a lot of that kind of stuff. Any sport, any topic, politics, you see the wildest claims from left to right, from center. You'll see it within minutes. And some of these people, you go, oh my God, you are unhinged. And you'll see other people that you go, I just disagree with you. And then I see some folks that go, do you know what? That could be right, but I hope it's not. So any of this stuff could be true, could be false. We're just in that day and age where I've said this before, Pavel, and it's a strange question to ask, but I'll ask you it again. Does it come a point where for a lot of people, the truth doesn't really matter anymore?
That depends on whether they had any type of personal experience that convinced them of what's going on.
I don't mean just UFOs.
Oh,
Like
Can you ask
in
the
the world
question
we live
again?
in. Yeah.
Can you
So
ask the question again?
does the truth really matter to a lot of people anymore? For me, I feel. Let me
No.
expand on that. Yeah, people have groups that they gravitate to. There's a notion in psychology. I think it's psychology. I'm not an expert. And like finding your tribe, and you
Yeah.
gravitate towards certain people, certain mindsets, certain actions, certain behaviors, and regardless of whether they are right or wrong, and that can be from youth. You get in with the wrong crowd. That happens to people. You get in with a geeky crowd, a normal crowd. You grow up and then you come away from them. What they done just worked for you at that time. And I think when you look online, there's some really, and we won't even go into like what examples are, but actually, let me give you one that came up on Doomer Friday that didn't involve myself or yourself. So I'll just say this, and I don't really want to go into it, but Chris Ramsey mentioned 9/11 and
Yeah.
the chance of it being a false flag event. The
Yeah.
comments that came up as he said that were very, very, very split
Yeah.
around him making that comment alone. So it's just one of those things where people are so they hold their opinions so dearly now, and I don't know if it's just a validation thing. And we will. This is relevant to UFOs, folks. Hopefully, you're sticking with us. The numbers are going up, so that's good. Like people have an opinion. 20 to 30 to 40 years ago, it was much harder to find people who were the same as you that you could speak to regularly. You might have a newsletter where you could read comments if you're a wrestling fan or UFOs, whatever it might have been, and you would see people who agreed with you. But outside of the circle of friends you had in the real world, you didn't get to speak to a load of other people. Now you've
Yeah.
got this instant gratification that no matter what your opinion is, you can find people who think the same online. And that's kind of where we are, even with the UFO topic, that it's really hard to convince people either way. And I've always said on my show, Pavel, at least, I don't want to convince people of anything. I want to present information, present stories, present testimony, present different opinions, and allow people to make up their own mind from there. What's your take on that?
Well, I have a different perspective because I did journalism and sports for 15 years, and I am very much intertwined with many of those practices. And for me, yes, it is very important to have differing opinions in a matter, but at the end of the day, somebody has the truth out of both of them. And that's what I think should matter. And but yeah, I do agree that if, for example, you're going to do a story about somebody who committed a heinous crime, and you need to speak to this somebody, right? You there as a journalist, or if you're an investigator or something similar, a detective, you need to learn how to interact with this person so you can get information out of them. And there's a lot of people online that don't see that characteristic. They go instantly to, oh, uh, you're platforming somebody I don't like, therefore you are just as awful as that person, you know. And it's that's the problem with currently this camps situation in every topic, not just UFOs. Um, it's unfortunate. I think it's part of the reasons why the internet hasn't been that great to humanity in general. There are many reasons why it has been, but you know, it's a double-edged sword. Um, but yeah, that's my take on that.
So, like I say, we've got a lot of claims that people have sent me in on Patreon and YouTube, and we'll try and get to some of those later. Where are we going to kick off? Where do you want to start with?
I guess Eric Davis in your interview, because there were a couple of things that I found really interesting, specifically on his doubling down of Bob Lazar, which it's a contested topic, as we know, and also where he said that the Mark McCandlish
So,
story is not real too. He said that also. That was very
Yeah.
interesting to me.
One thing I found interesting, and again, I've really have genuinely tried, as me and Pavel do, to make this show a little bit less chaotic than it kind of is, as I was talking about with Pavel before we hit record. The claims, and here's one that came up that this really pricked my ears up, and if I'd had more time, I would have dug into this more. Eric said he's going to come back on, so I'd love to get through that. But here's a clip where he talks about James Lakatsky. You mention he mentions a
Mark
few
McCandlish.
individuals. Mark McCandlish. He mentions Bob Lazar being a pathological liar. I knew already Eric Davis was not a fan of Lazar or his story. I didn't get a chance to really go into that. But he then makes a really interesting point around James Lakatsky, who he says is not a liar, but he doesn't understand some of the things Lakatsky has claimed because it doesn't really fit in with what he knows or thinks, but he doesn't think he's lying. So here's something he said. I'll play a clip of this now.
Yep.
So I have trouble with it. But Lakatsky did say that he did get to go inside of a recovered craft once the engineers figured out how to open it up. And he got inside of it, and he said, I think this was in his book, one of his 3 books, that he couldn't recognize any obvious looking propulsion or power inside that craft. And externally, it had no external control systems and no external propulsion, no exhaust or intake ports for air or exhaust for rocket thrust, none of that. And he did not reveal the configuration of that UFO he went into. So I know that he had to get DOPSR review of his book, and if they felt that that was too much information, they wouldn't have allowed him to print that. I have a feeling that he had more description of that craft and of the events surrounding it, or the circumstances surrounding his being there, that was in the book, and I'll bet you anything that DOPSR made him redact it, made him to pull it out, because that was just too much information. So
So one of Lakatsky's biggest ever claims was indeed on Weaponized, where he talked about they had access to a craft that took some amount of time for them to actually work out how to get into it. And then eventually when they did, it was bigger on the inside than it was on the outside, TARDIS style. On that sort of claim, what's your take? And also on Lakatsky himself, because he's quite an elusive guy, really, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, I still don't know how many of all these people that are like part of, like, they were part of Stargate, Lakatsky's not necessarily part of them, but he was part of OSAP, and we know that they overlapped. I still don't know to what degree these people were involved in counterintelligence operations throughout their careers. So I have no way of saying, oh, this guy is legit, this guy is not legit. I would like to see him testify in public under oath. That will be interesting from somebody like him, who once did say that he would probably not tell the truth, even if it was under oath, which was an interesting claim to make. So yeah, the claims are pretty wild and fantastic, but we've heard that before as well, something similar to that from Bob Lazar, right? And so it's happened before. And it's interesting to see Eric Davis's constant reticence towards Bob as well. And I get the inconsistencies about his story and everything. I've seen them. I don't really take a side on that one, but I don't know. He was a part of one of the many intel agencies. I think that he may have a big role within his agency, but I don't think, like, in the overall story, he knows everything that's going on because of the compartments and all that. So I don't think he's aware of everything about the CIA's activity or the Air Force or the Department of Energy. So he has like his own like side of it and what he experienced. But I don't know, man. It's the counter intel aspect of it makes me always pause.
Yeah, do you know what? I think you're right there where you say he's got his own side of it. And that's a really interesting and probably correct way to put this for a lot of these people. I think more and more, instead of looking at people on the floor playing a board game like Monopoly, right? And you've got 4 people around the board playing the game. If someone comes and goes and comes back to the game later, for them it could be the still game. Things have moved on a bit, they can catch up. This whole subject to me seems more and more like what you've got is you've got a game of Monopoly, and on top of that, a game of Connect 4, on top of that, a game of Battleships, on top of that, a game of Twister. And there's people going back and forward between the games, and not everyone's allowed to play every game. And then you're asking someone, let's pick Danny Sheehan. Danny, what's happening on the game of Twister just now? Does
Tells
he
you
tell
what
you
he
what
knows.
happened? He tells you what he knows, yeah. But,
Yeah.
was he there for the whole game? Was he there for part of the game? Did someone who was playing Twister tell him while he came to play Connect 4 what was going on in Twister? That's the way this seems to work. So I think the idea that people come out and say something, they're either telling the truth or they're lying. I think there is, unfortunately, for a lot of folks who won't want to hear this, there is a grey area in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And that is probably where a lot of the truth lies. I find it more interesting when someone like Eric Davis makes that sort of comment around Lakatsky saying something he doesn't subscribe to or agree with, but that Lakatsky's not lying. So those grey areas and where things have slipped through cracks, or where someone has a level of knowledge or a level of experience that you don't have, that to me sounds interesting. That also makes sense as to why this subject is so convoluted, so complicated.
When it comes to those, like the old guys, and especially the 2 that appeared in Age of Disclosure, right, which is Puthoff and Davis, the old scientist guys, those seem to be like the only 2 out of the bunch that have like gone beyond when asked about species and all that stuff. I would like to know if David Grush's sources to say the same thing are the same ones that Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis have, or if David managed to corroborate a lot of that separately through multiple sources. I would love to know that, and I'm not sure it happened. I know that Eric did mention that. Did he?
The 4 types of
No,
beings?
the David Grusch corroborating a lot of the evidence that they allegedly saw too, but separately, corroborating it
I
separately.
can't remember.
I think
He did. I want to mention though on the 4 types of beings, because this was obviously a comment that Davis had made that people really picked up at the, what was it called? The oversight hearing, or the hearing that was public but not a big hearing, and it had Davis, Elizondo and co.
Yeah.
And Davis spoke about the 4 types of beings. He mentioned the Greys, the Nordics, the Reptilians, and the Insectoids or / Mantis things, right? And I'd asked him about why is it only Greys that seem to be recovered in any kind of crash scenario, dead or alive? You never hear about Nordics or Mantis beings or Insectoids being recovered. It's always Greys.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, that's a really good question. He did say that the Greys and the Nordics are the only beings with the credibility, the good evidence for that he believed. And then he commented that when it comes to reptilians and insectoids, they were much I can't remember the word, but much lower credibility. And I took from his answer, it's very much, we have heard about those from some testimony, whereas we have proof, tangible proof of Greys and Nordics. The Nordics, I think, from film, from the Holloman landing.
Oh.
That's the way I took that from Davis. And for me, that's a really important distinction, that Davis isn't coming out and saying there are 4 types. It's actually, we've got Greys, and that's the stuff Grusch is talking about. The Nordics we have encountered and have spoken to, but see those other ones, the insectoids, the reptilians, that's because we hear people talk about those in testimony, and we don't have any proof of that. So for me, he said he holds those a lot lower down on the probability scale, and you can kind of make of that what you will.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. I don't know. Have you ever spoken to Brent Friedman and Bryce Sable. Have you had them on your show?
Yeah.
Yet?
When they started
Um,
their Sound Like Frequency, yeah.
Yeah, this did you hear the story from Brent about Orcas Island? That was an interesting one.
No?
No, he allegedly encountered one of these Nordics at Orcas Island. Very interesting. It's on American Alchemy, I believe. And I hear those types of stories quite consistently about these Nordics. It's
Hmm.
really strange.
Well, he talked about the Holloman landing and said that the three beings that came out, and this is the landing back in 1964, people, were at Holloman Air Force Base. Allegedly, a craft came in, landed, and Air Force personnel came to meet people from the craft. Apparently, another craft or two craft came in with it. Those were escorting, those went away. A saucer type craft lands on the runway. This is all filmed. The Air Force guys meet them. He said the Nordics were almost Egyptian looking and that they had some kind of attachments. And in the AI video, because I even watched a Gaia interview with Eric Davis, so I had to wash myself thoroughly after that. But it was actually not. It wasn't actually bad for being a Gaia production, right? And they had them the Nordics depicted with one with the kind of Egyptian chin, like protrudement, whatever you want to call it, with a kind of staff type thing. So it wasn't just three Erling Haaland looking beings walked out. It was actually they had something about them.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But obviously the Holloman stuff,
Sort of
Davies
like
seems to think-
Stargate looking ancient aliens, right?
Stargate's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. I spoke to a guy, Ryan Dean, who told a story about speaking to Tom DeLonge at a Barnes and Noble in Encinitas, and he talked about his experience. And he also mentions these like tall people with like staffs and really strange.
So the Constellation Fleet says the Holloman landing was debunked by someone on YouTube. It wasn't. There is a small piece of video that allegedly is of the craft coming down to land, but I think people have seen that particular piece of video is an aircraft or a plane. It's just a reflection. But the actual footage, Davis and others have said, has never been released, and it is under lock and key. But it was filmed and taken away. So Holloman wasn't debunked. A video that was said to be a piece of the Holloman footage was shown to be a plane. That's very different from Holloman being debunked. And I think that's where I'm more than happy for any footage, video, etc., to be shown to be what it is. We don't have to use the word debunked, but just to be shown what it truly is. But that doesn't disprove a case. It just shows that that isn't connected to that for me. So, yeah.
Yep.
Anything else you liked in the interview? And Constellation Fleet says, my mistake, Andy. Listen, when you've got $28 million in your bank, sorry, 33, these are the kind of mistakes that you...
It wasn't at 45. It's 45,
no,
right?
Don't be stupid. It's not gone up that way yet. But yeah, anything else in the Davis interview you thought was good?
I did enjoy how chummy he was while talking about like OSAP and all that stuff. But what was it that you liked the most about the interview that you spoke to him about?
I don't know. I'm never usually happy with any interview when it's done. I always think I could have done with more time. I think he said a lot. I like the stuff about Lakatsky, the craft, the beings. I like that he cleared up around the beings and the credibility and probability of those four types being genuine. I think that sort of thing may upset some people, hearing that the reptilians and insectoids aren't considered, at least from Eric Davis's perspective, and that will be the perspective of some others, aren't considered necessarily legitimate.
Yeah.
But Greys and Nordics are.
Something that did catch my attention, I told you a little bit, is the whole mention of Mark McCandlish, but Eric Davis made a mistake remembering some details of the McCandlish story. He said that McCandlish, he never found evidence that McCandlish visited any air shows.
Do you want to summarize the Mark McCandlish story, just in case someone's
listening? The Mark McCandlish story came out on 2001 at Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project event at the National Press Club in Washington. And McCandlish came out with a sketch of what seems to be like a flying saucer, but it was like a little more archaic than your usual sort of flying saucer because it was a lot bigger. And the claim is that an acquaintance of McCandlish, who was also an illustrator for aerospace magazines, he attended an air show and accidentally got on an air show that he wasn't supposed to be at, where there were generals, colonels, people from aerospace. And he claims, this guy's name is Brad Sorensen, he claims that he saw three what they called or referred to as alien reproduction vehicles. And they were hovering above the floor. And there were different sizes from the little one to the bigger one. And this guy came out of the air show and went straight to McCandlish to tell him everything. And they drew a sketch of it even. And that set off a pretty wild story that ended in McCandlish allegedly taking his own life with a shotgun. And through the grapevine, and I've been asking about this to old-time researchers who were more involved when McCandlish passed away, they claim that McCandlish was supposed to meet up with Senator Marco Rubio. I think it was 2021 or something like that. And then 3 days before that, or a few days before that, he died. And that was like, according to these people who have been trying to ask around, that's something that really scared Marco Rubio when it happened. Eric Davis made the mistake of saying that it was Mark McCandlish, the one who attended the air show, and that he found no evidence of it. That is not the story even. The one who attended the air show is Brad Sorensen, and the one who told the story after being told it by Brad was Mark McCandlish. And there's a really interesting documentary on YouTube called The Fluxliner, the Mark McCandlish story, that tells you pretty much everything that happened. There's also another mysterious death tied to that documentary. The director of the film, when he was in the editing process, he was diagnosed with a really aggressive form of cancer that killed him in months. And he was also involved in trying to tell the McCandlish story. So there's a lot of smoke in that case. Also, Gerb has a pretty thorough, as he does them, video on this. So those mistakes alone put into question how much Dr. Davis really did look into the Mark McCandlish story, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm hopeful to have him back on at some point to dig into a few different things. Like I say, it would be good. On that, just a reminder, tomorrow, I have slight advertisement, this one. Danny Sheehan sitting down with me for about 5 or 6 hours. Yes, I said hours, folks, because quite often I get these interviews and I get so many listener questions sent over. I don't get to ask them to the guests because I run out of time. And last week when Danny was back on it, I asked him about this. I'm going to do a series and I'm going to sit down for 5 or 6 hours. And here's one for all you who love the grifter thing. I'm going to put it as a series for members behind a paywall, but I will do like, I will release like fuck off. I will release like a 90-minute supercut for people who watch the podcast on the free feed. So there'll be free audio, free video, but there's going to be like a series, and it's going to be just for members. I'm going to start doing more of this in the background for folks who pay for the podcast. So there'll still be a free version, but there will be one for the nice, good, the people who pay for the podcast. But it's going to be a long one. Yeah. So, but I'm looking forward to doing that as a bit more of a series, and being able to ask questions in a format that I don't have to worry too much.
You're getting the grifter.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, grift. You know, we use the word grafter quite a lot in Scotland. I don't know about, but do you know what grafter is? A grafter?
No.
It's like a hard worker. So if you're a grafter, people would say, "Oh, he's a grafter." You're a hard worker, right?
Okay.
I like to think UFO grafter. So yes,
like a UFO workaholic. That's better.
Yeah, I put a lot of effort in. You might think it's shit, but I still do.
Yeah,
But yeah,
same,
so
same.
so I'm going to do that as a new series, and there will be stuff there for folks. So more of that coming up, but it's just more content. And the best thing is you don't have to watch it or listen to it. I appreciate it if you did, if it's your thing. But yeah, so that's going to be coming out on recorded tomorrow and coming out over the next couple of weeks. Pavel, I've been ready to move on from my wonderful Eric Davis interview that everyone's going to go and
Yes.
check out.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
That was a wonderful interview, man. That was great.
Thank you. No, and do you know what? People like you can never achieve a level of interview like that with Eric Davis, Pavel. Yours, it'd be,
If
no,
he
yours would be-
ever would do one with me, which I don't think, I've made enough
he said
fun
he
of
wouldn't.
that, man.
I asked him. He said no.
I mean, the salad thing was pretty funny. You gotta give him that. And he probably
I was worried that he was going to turn up and eat. Everyone getting in touch with me, every other comment was, "Do you think he'll bring a salad?" And I was like, "Oh God, I hope not." So yeah. But speaking of salads, there was a veritable feast for the ufologist over on Reddit or AMA. I always say Reddit AMA, but it wasn't. It was on YouTube, but it was Anomalous Coalition.
Shout out to Andrea. She's wonderful putting that together. That's the muscle behind the Anomalous Coalition. So shout out to Andrea.
Yes, absolutely brilliant. Matthew Brown and Jeff Nusatelli. Jeff will be on with me in a couple of weeks' time, and I'll get to speak to him at some point in September. But they were both on, hosted by Leslie Kane, of course, one of the co-authors of the original New York Times article, December 2017. And yeah, and they were doing, obviously part of Vanguard now. They've got this network set up to support whistleblowers. I still think there's a lot of questions around that. Not necessarily at Vanguard, but at the fact that they have had to set Vanguard up when so many other organizations were looking to do something similar and doesn't seem to have the money quite reached. Or the support,
and,
let's just say, have reached them.
And, people who conflate whatever Vanguard is trying to do with all of these other orgs that already existed, that also claim to be nonprofit, but I think that there's a major distinction between what seeks to be a purely whistleblower fund to help whistleblowers and the other organizations that have a lot more stuff on their sort of portfolio of deliveries, and I don't know, it just feels like the Vanguard feels like something that came up from the people, from and sort of like a civilian effort to help whistleblowers, because I think that's what it is. And there's a massive difference between that and another major nonprofit that has been already active for a few years in the topic. Major difference. Just wanted to make that distinction.
Yeah, that's very fair. And I know one organization, the Disclosure Fund / Disclosure Foundation, had some people, including myself, questioning, what's going on if you're looking to help whistleblowers with legal funds and whatnot, and then they're having to come out and set up their own. They have made a sizable donation to Vanguard, which is great, and it's good to see them working together, because I don't think enough of these organizations do seem to work together or be on the same track when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think it just waters down the whole thing.
There's a lot of politics, man, involved in it. And I think that's one of the main problems, that each of those organizations have a very different idea of what disclosure should be. And even though they're playing in the same sandbox, they're very often not agreeing on stuff, but they have to do the public facing thing, and they have to appear to be in good terms when the reality is a little different. I'm not saying that they're constantly going at each other or something like that, but you can tell that there are sort of camps even then. And we started talking about this at the beginning of the conversation. The camps. There are camps in the disclosure movement, and each of them seem to have a slightly different or very different idea of how things should go. And yeah, it would be nice if we could have one fucking like round table where every single one of them sits down, like one for Sheehan, one for like, because every, like Sheehan, for example, he very clearly has some kind of tie to the Catholic Church. And I think that that is also playing a lot into the whole disclosures movement. The interference or involvement from sort of religious or semi-religious or secret society groups that are also looking into it, and they all have a different idea of what it is. It would be nice to have like a common space where they could all feel like it's sort of like a Switzerland, and they could talk about what the differences of opinions are, instead of like doing the behind the scenes stuff, or backhanded compliments and shit like that, that it's just not helping.
Yeah. But then again, the nature of this topic, like we said, I just don't think it's even realistic to look for any kind of blue sky thinking. What were some of you've got some videos you lined up, Pavel. Do you want to play any of those first, or do you want to go into chatting first on it?
Let's play those first if you want, and then just talk about it. Yeah.
Cool. Any particular order?
From the first one to the last one that I uploaded.
Cool. So they're in order. That's fine. Awesome. Let's add this to the stage. So we've got Matthew Brown here.
That operation was designed to fabricate evidence for myself and Dylan Borland and others committing treason and espionage against the United States government, charges that carry, in the extreme, the death penalty. Those charges, those files, those documentations have not gone anywhere. In fact, the agent responsible for this, again, shameful operation, after it was exposed to the public, it received a promotion to the Intelligence Community Inspector General, where they now actually oversee all UAP whistleblower intake, past, present, and future. A very compelling reason to not trust really any organization right now with UAP whistleblower testimony, as long as these actions have not been redressed.
Cat's out of the bag now. That was wild. Yeah. When I heard it, I was like, oh, so that's why. That's why Matthew is so adamant. And no, don't go there. What do you think?
Yeah, I get why they've come forward, right? Borland, Brown, any whistleblower, okay? They've come forward, they've said what they've said. And on one hand, you've got people in the community, probably people like us, and a lot of the folks listening or watching, okay, who are grateful, appreciate what they've said. They might not even all necessarily believe them, but they appreciate they've come forward and said what they've said. And then you get another group who just give them nothing but shit. And that's the public-facing side of it. They can deal with that, okay? They can deal with some nasty comments on YouTube and X and DMs and stuff I'm sure they get. But it's the stuff that happens behind closed doors and the stuff we're hearing more and more that is the pressure on these people, the stuff their families go through, the stuff... I've told a story before, Pavel. I won't go into the full thing. But I listened to a football podcast where there was a guy who years ago was like a supporters liaison for the football team. And he was in communication with the chairman of Rangers Football Club at the time, a guy called David Murray. And he would go into meetings with David Murray, who was this multi-millionaire businessman who owned the club. And this guy, David's just a fan who was representing the fans group. And he would intimidate him, and he would tell him things about where he knew this guy's parents worked, what their mortgage payments were like, what they had left, where his wife had just got a job, things like that. And they would say, oh, I know the owner of that company, actually, your wife started working at. And when he didn't toe the company line or the party line like this guy wanted, he would threaten him. So imagine when that's a guy who's just saying things about a football team. What is it like when you are a patriot who has sworn allegiance and has done a really, really, really incredibly sensitive job in amongst a whole load of other folks who are only doing their job but probably don't feel they should come forward or can come forward or that you should do it, and then you break rank and tell your story? What must that be like, having that pressure? You know that phrase, having eyes burning in the back of your head? That I can imagine that's what this is like, where you just always have that stare. You say something, you're not just thinking about the YouTube audience or the social media audience or the podcasters who want to chat to you about a statement you've made. The people who are hearing that, there'll be faces in your mind as a Dylan Borland or a Matthew Brown or a David Grusch as you speak that will come up in your head, who will just be giving you blank, dead stares because of what you're saying and what that means for you, your family, friends. And I completely empathize with that. I just don't think those guys are going to get much sympathy or as much as they should from UFO community and elsewhere as well. And the public don't even think about that. And so when these guys are sitting on any kind of major news network and they're sharing their story, they're having a conversation across from a Joe Rogan, a Lex Friedman, a Sean Ryan, whoever it may be, those guys aren't really thinking about retaliation and what goes on. As we all know, the whole Ken Klippenstein stuff with David Grusch,
Oh yeah.
where imagine within 24 hours managing to get hold of someone's records through a FOIA request that are meant to
Yeah.
be classified anyway and confidential, and knowing exactly where to ask and being able to get them.
Yeah,
That was the most
and it's
open,
funny.
like,
You just have to look at, for example, with Ken, his background, and you will see that his father worked at DOE for many years, and that's those types of connections. Like also, I think the Wall Street Journal article, one of the writers was from had a family member in aerospace, uh, and so it's little things like that that you go like, okay, so this is why this may be happening, because there's very evidently like a black hand of sorts, right?
mm. And do you know what? I won't go back on it too much. And listen, for a few folks commented on the Sheehan stuff, I get Sheehan has a real big issue with Trump, right? That's not going to be part of this new series. But Sheehan on my interview made the point around there being almost eight groups or levels of people involved in this cover up. And he talked about it from the top being the MJ12, 3 or 4 generations of people from the cover up from the 40s that have passed it on through family, through close relations that are still in charge of the cover up at the very top level. And then the next level down was like your whistleblowers and stuff coming forward. He also mentioned the NSSA, which is the National Security Space Association, which if you look at that group and what they do, it's a group, and I'm going to paraphrase Danny Sheehan here, but it's like all active or recently retired folks who were involved in various different aspects of military, space agencies, aerospace, and he pointed at them being part of this cover up too. Sean Kirkpatrick is on that board. That is on their website. So that's an interesting, like part of that as well, that his name is there. And then below that, you've got another group and another group and another group, all the way down to, as Danny said, the last one would be the American people. As
At the
being
very
the
bottom,
last
huh?
ones to know. Yeah. And listen, I said the point to Danny, I think, or at least I thought to say it, so I hope I did, that you do have everyone else in the world in that pot too.
Yeah.
I'm not American, Pavel. Neither are you.
Yeah.
But we have that right to know as well. But I get Danny's
Yeah.
point is American taxpayer money, American Congress working for the people, the government works for the people. So I get that. I totally get that.
There's a lot of people that do say that with an American-centric sort of philosophy, though. And that needs to be pointed out as well. I don't think Danny is like that. I think I know what he meant, but there's a lot of people that do mean it in that way, like America, like
America.
yeah.
Thinking Team America, America, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
So I get it. They lead the way, but they're also leading the way in the cover up as well. But I can't say much when the UK government is literally sitting on their thumbs doing nothing about it. So yeah.
Same with Mexico. Mexico are also very quiet, and there's been a lot of historical activity, sightings, everything, So
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. Next video then from Matthew.
Yep.
If you're on the inside, I wouldn't really recommend reporting anything at this point. It seems to be quite a hostile environment. It was, for a brief period of time, somewhat opened, but that's years in the past. So unless you have ironclad proof of wrongdoing, and we're lucky enough to obtain recordings of that wrongdoing and can obtain a lawyer to defend you through years of court cases, and can identify trustworthy parties at the FBI or a similar law enforcement body to bring your complaint to. Unfortunately, I think you're better off trusting your long-term coworkers, your let's just say groups that you might be involved with, if possible, and playing it safe.
You know, Jeremy Corbell has stated before that he records absolutely every single call that he makes and every interaction that he has, like online and on his phone. This ODNI officer allegedly called Jeremy Corbell to tell him about Dylan and about Matt. And I would think that if Jeremy Corbell does record everything, he must have that recording, right?
You would imagine so, yeah.
So for me, it's like, I don't know if that should be presented, because if this person is the one in charge of like taking whistleblower intake, there is some kind of a disconnect right now between what Matthew is sounding the alarm on and Eric Burleson going like, oh, here's a whistleblower form that you can fill where you can deliver all your disclosures to the government in a controlled manner. It's like, which is it? You know?
Yes, I've thought that as well, Pavel, where Eric Burleson, is he almost going too official with this now, where it's about the process and the procedure, and that's not going to wash and play out well on this? Because like you say, these whistleblowers are coming forward and saying that Matthew Brown's literally telling you, don't go to Arrow, don't go to Pursue, don't speak to anyone just now, because it's not going to go well for you. That isn't set up to be fruitful for whistleblowers. But like you say, you've got Eric Burleson saying, "In you come, we can sort this out, we can help you." Interestingly, he mentioned obviously at the FBI there. Have you noticed, Pavel, and did we mention this before? In any of the drops from Pursue, it gives you on the files, on the actual file names, who they're from. And it tends to be Department of War, FBI, CIA, NSA, NASA. The one that's giving the most files by far is the FBI.
Yep.
The CIA is hardly handing anything over. And NASA gives you a lot of like, recordings and transcripts and stuff. But the FBI seems to be a hell of a lot more cooperative on this than the CIA does. And I wonder what the FBI and the CIA have going on between them over this.
Life imitating art, my brother.
Yeah.
Mulder and Scully are real, my brother. Just kidding.
Fucking hope so. I tried to slight sidebar. I tried to get Lego to send me one of those X-Files Lego sets for free. It was such a hassle to do it. Like they were telling me to join a forum and on the forum ask for it and someone might get in touch with me, and I was like, I just want a freebie. Like I don't really buy Lego. My kids like it. Like so yeah. If
That
someone wants
would
to buy,
be nice for the background though.
well, I was thinking if someone wants to buy the Lego set for me, build it and send me it, I'll put it up in the background. That'd be great. I'll even pay the postage. So
And like
so,
something that can keep it together while armed, so it doesn't break in the plane, right?
yeah, exactly. So final clip from all three here.
Yeah, this is about intent.
Yeah, I think, just I agree with Jeff. In the short term and in my immediate environment, I'm more concerned about humans.
Right.
But yeah, to get to that next part, I think longer term, I definitely am more concerned about the NHI intentions.
Yeah.
That's a really broad bucket. So, more you can narrow it down to specific groups of them. It seems at least some of them have been present on Earth for a very long time, but they do not maintain an open relationship with humanity, except for very discrete encounters with leadership and humans through the sort of abduction or experiencer modalities. And those certainly, while some people claim to have very positive interactions, there's a very large amount that have the opposite, especially women, who seem to, unfortunately, get the worst of it, and over a very long period of time. So I'm very concerned about that. If it's true that there has been genetic interventions on humanity at certain points in our evolution, well, I would very much want to know what is the intent behind those interventions. What is being, added, removed, suppressed, or enhanced in humanity, and for what reasons? I don't have answers, but that's where, this is a journey of discovery, right? And that's kind of where I am at is again, what are the long-term intentions of the NHI present on Earth towards humanity?
Do you think there are government officials that know a lot on the classified level and beyond that have an idea about the intention that they're just not sharing with anyone? Or do you think everyone is baffled by that?
I think there is a very small group that does have a good degree of fidelity on intention, both in the U.S. government and in probably the major governments around the world. Some reason to believe that's true, as well as analysis. So it's a mix of what you would call evidence and thought. That's where I'm at.
And you don't have, just to reiterate, you don't have any idea of what they may have discovered about the intention, or any thoughts about what that might be. Is that correct?
None that I would say publicly yet. I want to have some degree of certainty before I share something serious as that.
Mm-hmm. Can you say if you think it might be sort of something that might be, quotes, negative for humanity as we go forward, or something that might be evolutionarily positive for us as a species? Do you have any sense of that, of whether it's a positive or negative kind of intention, or maybe a mixed one, depending on who we're dealing with? I don't know if you just can say any more about that.
Leslie was fishing there.
I would
say
that it's probably mixed, because there seems to be at least more groups involved than just one.
Yeah.
So, it's like saying all of humanity is bad news just because you only encountered the worst aspects of humanity. Can't fall into that trap. I need more data before I would feel comfortable, saying it's definitely this or that.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's the big question in everyone's mind. So many people's minds is the intention. And so far, Jeff says we're all here. We're still here, except for there are the individuals that have had the frightening encounters, but nothing on a mass scale has happened to harm us. So,
Man, there are so many different opinions on what is constituted as harm or abuse from these encounters and what is not. That is so varied, and the experiences of each person has so many differences to it on its own, that it's very difficult to gauge what the real intent is. Something that kept just coming at me whenever I talk to somebody who went through something like that, is that this experience in many cases seemed to be reflective upon where the person was born, geographical location, philosophical outlook, religious ideas. It all depends on a lot of different things that form that experience to the person, and they interpret it as such, based on those things and those characteristics. So it's very difficult for me to fully believe a camp that is saying it is all negative, and it is and fully believe the ones that say it's all love and light, because there's very clearly negative experiences as well. So I wonder if this has to do more with our own interpretation of the experience when it's happening, or if it's really that varied of even the entities that are making contact with people. What do you think?
I think if we're talking genuine contact cases, you have to separate those from cases that people think are happening. I've hosted so many experiencers in the past, and I always feel I have to justify this, right? there is a percentage of experiencer reports, cases. Some will be really well known, some will be far less known, that won't be true, that won't be genuine, that won't be real for a whole variety of reasons. Point to Eric Davis talking about reptilians and insectoids being more testimony based, right?
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to intent, it's a really interesting one, because I put that down to, I think an avenue that I'm going to try and explore a lot more is communication. And perhaps that goes hand in hand with intent, because intent opens up this whole, like you say, imagine another species that has been interacting with us. We'll go pure speculation territory here, Pavel. As we hit the hour mark, if people could like and comment and all that stuff, it really helps out, especially when we are talking shit. And if you like it, if you hate us, leave a like and a comment. That's, oh God, we would.
You can hate watch if you want. We don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Hate watches, hate like, keep smashing. I hear if you like, comment, and then hype on the video after, it does like a really bad thing for the channel and the algorithm, Pavel. So, but yeah, so anyway, so intent, you have to look at how many species are interacting with us. Is it, how many do you think? Let make this a conversation. So realistically,
realistically, I think that there's a lot of way too many gray being reports to ignore, and the whole interaction with these Nordic looking persons, that also seems to be very consistent. So those two. But the one that I have direct experience with is when somebody has a near-death experience and they have some sort of interaction with something that they can't quite understand. And I fall in that camp. So, and that is, as far as I know, that is non-corporeal type of entities that have interacted with people when they have near-death experiences or fear-death experiences, or as Mr. Nick Cook likes to say, shared death experience, because he also had something similar to that effect. And the effect of these experiences are very similar across the board. So that to me counts also as some type of interaction with some other entity that it's hard to describe really physically, you know? Those three for me.
Okay. So I tend to leave the sentient plasmoid stuff, as a lot of people call it, or orbs or whatever it is, out of the question. Not that that's the right thing to do. I just think it's far more difficult than having like an actual physical being involved in this kind of stuff. Same with, like you say, something that may be considered paranormal, something ghost-like, what would you call it? Something that was poltergeist type activity. Again, I get there are almost definitely 99.9% correlations and things related and stuff, but I do think there are some differences too that sometimes get crossed over. So if we keep it simple though, and just look at the idea of like beings coming here or being here and intent, is it, would a race of beings announcing themselves, I don't think at this point anything that's interacting with us is going to invade and enslave us, because the likelihood is that would have happened by now. If something was coming to destroy us, it would have probably done it, okay?
And you know, the likelihood also is that it's been here for longer than we have, probably.
Yeah. And there's ways and means to do this stuff. And to be fair, it's probably looking going, save the Ice Age weapon, because these idiots are doing it themselves anyway, so just give it time. So you've got to look at what would that look like. I get, and I'm going to go all over the place here, right? The speculation hour of the podcast. If these Nordics came down, and you know the idea of we can handle this, you know, this, that the public can handle it, right? I imagine most of the public and a lot of the UFO community, just my opinion, probably couldn't handle it. I'm going to include, Pavel, myself and yourself in that as well. We don't know. We might literally shit the bed if and when this happens and be like, oh my God, this was one thing, until it's actually there in your face. We don't know. You literally wouldn't know until it happened. But say these Nordics come down and they're really nice and all that, but they have some things where they're like, we like to live and work a certain way, and we think there are certain things that you have to do, you would get sections of society that would literally treat them like gods. So you would have a whole new religion built around a race of beings that have just arrived. They would be worshipped. There would be temples built for them. There would be mass walkouts of your average person who wants to leave their job, leave their family. You could get wives and husbands leaving their families going, I'm going to go and just worship these beings because this is it. This is the way. And that would shaft society, to use a Scottish phrase. You know, that would happen. So this whole idea that everything would just go on like normal isn't, for me,
dude. If you're already talking about this potentially being a real possibility and within the realm of speculation, that just makes me think that, like, back when the Sumerians were here, something along the same lines probably happened that eventually created all the religions since.
So, again, from an intent perspective, and this builds in, folks, the whole theme of this is claims and stuff, so I've tried to make this relatively structured, and failing miserably. But when you look at intent, if you are a being with such a high level of intelligence, an assumed level of intelligence and power, and, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, etc., etc., as was famously said by Iron Man, Tony Stark. So,
cultured bastard.
Yep. I'm rage baiting by getting something deliberately wrong so people comment and help the algorithm. Who was it said that, folks? Leave it in the comments. With great power comes great responsibility. I think it was Tony Stark. What do you think? No. So if you've got these beings who are watching, who have been here for a long time, who have observed, who know us, who have at least at some level studied our culture, they would probably know themselves. If we come down right now, if we announce ourselves to this population, not just the US, worldwide, there is going to be a real unsettling of these people. And maybe, again, let's just use the Nordics. This race, quite similar to us, will go, they aren't ready for this, and it's going to be too destabilizing. So from an intent perspective, is that secrecy or that hiding actually a sign of quite a positive intent, that they've stayed out the way? I'm not hearing that we've got any treaties with greys that have happened, but you do hear with other types of beings. So then, is it the case that, as Matthew Brown says, different camps, different groups, your greys, whatever they are, whoever they belong to, if they are their own sentience, if they're something else's robotic clones, you know, is the popular phrasing, then perhaps from an intent perspective, that's where you've got these little drone type creatures that are carrying out someone else's bidding, quite soulless, quite cold. They're not there to communicate in any way that's productive or positive, and it's a more negative type of experience. So again, from an intent perspective, they don't seem to mind doing certain things that are really uncomfortable for people. But then on the other hand, you've got these Nordics who, from what we know, if we just take maybe Holloman as the best example, have come down and went, can we speak with these guys in these suits? Yep, let's go and have a chat. We've got some escorts. They can head off just now. We're good. And we'll come back later on. Yeah. That's different signs of intent there for me. And like you say, who are, again, even just from a human race perspective, intent across our own society varies wildly, and how people live and what they think is reasonable human behavior, again, varies from place to place to place.
Yep. Geographical location, religious belief, what we were just discussing. Yeah. It will vary based on that.
Pavel, I think this is aimed at you. Ricardo Videla says, can't understand one of these guys. I think that's aimed at you. So if you could just make sure
I'll try and use my more Mexican accent.
Yeah, it's clearly aimed at you, that. So apologies, Ricardo. Excuse. I don't know, that's French, I think. So but yeah. So yeah, I think intent's really interesting. And then if you do go down the route of abductions and we hear about the mantis beings and reptilians, and look at like what Calvin Parker reported all those years ago, those beings look really different to what a lot of other beings. And is that a thing of time where over the decades, they don't look, it almost looks of its time, the beings themselves, don't they? Almost like the Michelin Man tire type creatures and square and triangle heads, and they don't move very well, was quite science fiction of its time. Whereas we don't hear too much of that now, do we? And I don't know, does that mean those, and you know, God bless Calvin Parker, I got to speak to him really early on in
You're
the
talking
podcast,
about the Pascagoula event, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie Hicks.
Yeah.
And yeah, so those experiences, does that lend less credibility to those? Does it add more that it was a unique? Was that a unique visitation? Was that literally one of the rare cases of something came here from somewhere else? There was an experience and it went away and didn't come back.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't that happen?
Isn't the Socorro event also with Lonnie Zamora a very unique looking kind of being?
Yes, there's a few of them that are odd looking. Even the Virginia case. The Virginia case is quite an
That's
odd
very
unique.
Yeah. Man, who knows? This is crazy. The more that I hear about this, the more I think about this idea that whenever two people are seeing the same phenomenon, each of them sees something different. And this feeds into the whole idea that there might be some sort of interaction between whatever that thing is and our perception, human perception. And it will always be different depending on the person. And that goes back also to the whole how you interpret the phenomenon when you're experiencing it. And yeah, I get that there's a lot of people that have these violating sort of experiences, and it's awful. And I would not want to be them experiencing that. But there's also people who go through very different experiences that are not negative at all. And it's hard to pinpoint which one is real or if they're all real. Why does it happen like that? So varied. It's very difficult to determine.
I think there's an element of what I saw in the 90s. Bear in mind, I was a kid. I was about 10 or 11 years old, where there was 5 of us saw it, adults and a couple of kids. And I remember it clearly. But my mum remembers seeing something, but not really. But she's not really open to this whole subject. She finds it interesting that her son has a podcast. If you asked her what it was called, she would have no. I said this a few weeks ago about my dad not having a clue. My mum wouldn't have a clue either. They're divorced, by the way. But so that level of, oh yeah, he's got a podcast thing, but you know, that would be her extent of
That's my
knowledge
mom too. That's my mom too.
Yeah, just like from there they don't really know.
They don't,
so, and I've asked the people that were with me before. I won't go into it in detail because people have heard this a few times. They don't really remember too clearly what it was, just that it was really strange. And it's actually, bear in mind, I'm going back nearly 30 years. It's an incident where in my head, I quite regularly try and go, actually, it must have been this, or it must have been this. But there's nothing that works. And I end up, it's almost like I'm trying to convince myself of something I didn't see. I know exactly what I saw, to quote a James Fox documentary. You know, a Ferris wheel type object at an angle, spinning like a washing machine. There was just lots of lights firing round. It was low down. It wasn't up in the sky. And when you talk about perception management, is it a case of they just saw something weird in the distance, some lights? We were in a really busy, populated area at a busy time of night for the road, the streets, the shops and houses. Loads of people would have seen that. So was it something that only we saw where we were? I'm not big-headed enough to think that craft was there for me to go, wow, there's a UFO and now I'm really into this topic. I was anyway. And I'm going to start a UFO podcast in 30 years. Don't know what that is, but, you know, let's invent podcasts. I'm not saying that, but you have these experiences for different reasons. And for me, I do think it was a little bit of that perception management thing where people who weren't necessarily massively open to seeing it, like the older folks that were there, didn't really see much.
Kind of sounds like you saw a version of what the Ezekiel wheel is described as, right?
No, I know what you
No?
mean, but literally imagine a Ferris wheel. Someone's asking a Ferris wheel on its like side, like maybe 30 degrees, spinning incredibly fast, but I couldn't make out a shape. If I was going to say a shape,
I
I would say
see.
it was a disc with intermittent lights, but I couldn't see a disc. I could just see massive lights firing round, and it was
Yeah.
big. It was but you couldn't see the bottom of it for the houses cutting off the bottom of it. That's how low down it was. People still send me videos now of, was it like this? Was it like this? I've seen a few things that look like discs with intermittent lights, but it wasn't like I saw. And again, it was the mid-90s. We just walked on home afterwards. I had an interest in the topic before then, but for me, that's always been one of those where I remember in 2019, I saw like a triangle type object, but I'm more than happy to say there's every chance that was just me misidentifying a small plane that looked like it was hovering, but it wasn't. It was dark, etc. But it looked really strange. But going back to the 90s, there's no denying I saw something really, really weird, which is interesting. So yeah, but again, is it that it's there for you to see and it's there for a reason? I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows what the interactions between them and our perception really is, but that would be interesting to explore.
I want to ask you, so on Matthew Brown's claim then, sticking on claims, sticking on underlying evidence, right? Matthew Brown says he doesn't want to speak about what he has learned or knows about intent. Why not?
Because I think that most of what he's researched so far is open source and not necessarily anything classified per se. So whenever he's ready to talk about that, maybe I'm wrong though, but this is my sense that he's studied the topic for a while. He knows about like the authors and stuff like that, and I think that it comes from that, and also the whole esoteric aspect of what he's researched throughout his life. That also plays into a lot of that. So whenever he's ready, I think that that's what he's gonna discuss. That the research has been open source the entire time. I think that what he was exposed to was this report of Immaculate Constellation, which is different. But when it comes to that question of intent, I'm not sure if Matthew does have any like from the government information that he can't share now, and he needs to be given permission. And as I said, I could be wrong, but that's my read.
So why not just come out and say, and this is really easy for me to say, right? And I would love to have the conversation with Matthew on the show at some point. I'm sure we will. But just to say, well, just frame it as, look, this is just from some of the research I've done. This isn't from any top secret government file. This is just from things I've read and based on my own experience, my own research, my own work, my knowledge. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together here to try and make 4, and then frame it as that.
You know, I told you that I could be wrong because he did have access to a lot of different classified servers. So that's why I'm telling you I could be wrong. He may have found something that he can't really discuss, and there may come a time when he can. Also, like, we can't ignore that there is a level of esotericism embedded in government institutions throughout decades, and they very much still believe a lot of those things and operate under those sort of rules, but they don't tell the public. They do it in the back channels and in the background. And whenever that activity does come forward, which I think is kind of difficult that it will be, then I think that we're going to get a lot more honest information about these activities, I think. I don't know if you agree there.
Maybe. It just seems like a lot of different conversations. I'm still very much in the camp of I will happily sit here and speculate with you all evening, every Monday, just answering questions. I love speculation, right? But I think realistically, taking a step back, I'm just happy for us to be looking like lurching towards potentially some confirmation at this point. And again, the disclosure. I'm with the Richard Dolan camp here of disclosure, not necessarily, but capital C confirmation, a statement from high level, probably got to be the president of the US, or say if the Chinese done it, it'd be interesting. Same with the Russians, but it'd probably have to be Trump at this time, or some major scientific body where it's like a group of people on a stage in white coats who you don't know who any of them are, and they talk about this because of evidence, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I'm the confirmation route of things for me is where this kind of needs to go. And I just don't see where any time after we get a confirmation, say Trump does it tomorrow, that whole thing that Bigelow recommended of standing in Air Force One and going, oh, by the way, there's a non-human intelligence and they've been here a long time. You know, I don't see how very quickly that goes to intent and communication. I think you could get some form of confirmation and perhaps it then be a long time before we get any progress from that.
Yep.
Not to say that in that time it's not an interesting time.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different conversations that are going to happen if such confirmation comes. It's not just UFOs that have been sort of suppressed throughout history. It's many different topics and areas of science, history, philosophy, political history, which is like there's a lot hidden there. And there's a lot of information that has been destroyed throughout the epochs, I think. And I think that it's also important to have those conversations because that will add up to the entire reality has been classified from humans for a long time.
Yeah, that comes down to it. I think initially, if we get a confirmation, excellent, buzzing, really happy. The next thing then is that idea of what's actually going on, we can be told at that point. Again, that whole reality is classified. What then changes? Because overnight, they will not want to ruin everything. I still think you'll get a kind of government fumble along of, we've uncovered this massive cover-up. Aliens are real. We've got some technology. We're going to work on this and we'll gradually get things out as we discover it. And it'll be a gradual rollout still. There's not going to be a kind of crazy month where the world changes because they basically tell you, go and watch these documentaries, go and read these books. That'll catch you up. We now live with our new Nordic overlords.
Assuming that tech bros who have influence in American politics don't take over the whole thing, which is possible. Let's not beat around the bush.
Yeah, could definitely happen. First interview with a Nordic on Joe Rogan. That would do good numbers.
Yeah,
that would do well.
Sponsored by Peter Thiel. Just kidding.
Yeah. Peter Thiel's been leaving me 100k super chats. That's how I've made some of my millions. Like, so anything else from that? I've got some quotes or comments, but
go ahead.
I think for me, like I've got like 10 right, but the biggest three for me, Matt Brown saying a small group may understand NHI intentions. That has big implications, but he's not willing to go beyond that right now. Maybe that's something I'd like to hear Grusch and others talk about down the line. Elizondo and co. Elizondo's got a book coming out, but we don't know when. That was meant to be out already, got removed. I'm guessing
Jay Stratton's book is coming too.
Stratton's book's coming out, so can we get Stratton talking about intent? Will he talk about intent in his book? I don't know. I imagine a few folks will already have Stratton's book. I'm not hinting there before anyone starts to go, oh, I don't have it. I would love it.
I did hear that people already have it. They have it reading it. Yeah.
Davis said he doesn't and hasn't seen what's in it. But I imagine some of Stratton's mates have got a copy of it. So it'll be interesting to see if intent is mentioned there. Jeff talking about the Vandenberg Air Force Base event with the triangle being over it. That has names, contractors, records, witnesses, documentation. And he's saying, while it's maybe not one that he's been able to come out and say, I can tell you where the evidence is in terms of the craft or the bodies, Jeff's saying there's a really interesting case there which he obviously had to get statements and whatnot from, that has a paper trail. It's modern. It's not stuff that's going back 40, 50, 60, 70 years. This happened recently, and these people can be spoken to now. They're not on their deathbeds. They are very much active in various roles in different organizations. And that's a really good way to kind of look at this, especially for folks who are quite not just nuts and bolty, but very like, I need proof and evidence. Well, there's one. You can literally follow back witness statements. And whistleblower protections may be the bottleneck. Congress asks for witnesses. Well, witnesses say the pathway themselves is going to expose them to retaliation, which again we talked about, which was, I think, a really fair point from Matthew Brown. And I don't know where that kind of leaves on that.
He wrote an article recently where he talks about this
character assassination.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to raise there. That a lot of these people go through, and it's not just the fear of like them breaking into your home or the stuff that you said that they can handle. There's a lot of really suspicious activity and online against people like them that it's like that can be liable, like, and it's easy to identify, and it's a lot of just dirty tactics like guilty by association and character assassination, like, oh, he's crazy, he's nuts, he's like, and that is happening all over. And it's impossible to find out which of those are intentional and with an agenda behind it, because there's a lot of people that jump on the same wagon and are just parroting stuff that they saw online without doing their own research. A lot of that happens in this space, and I think it's very valuable to talk about these other aspects of it and what people like Dylan and Matthew and Jeff and Dave go through on a daily basis. And me. And you, yeah.
Yeah, I go through quite a lot. I've got 3 children who are utter bastards, so yeah, I go through quite a lot on a daily basis, folks. Just trying to prepare for shows.
I can only imagine your kids are all grown up and watching you say this about them. It's like, oh, that's that for you.
Scumbags, all 3 of them. One of them's got his own YouTube channel already and has had. He does YouTube shorts for Rangers.
You're joking.
No, my 10-year-old has a YouTube channel for
Holy
Rangers
crap.
FC. And mate, his shorts do good numbers. 10-year-old, and he gets like 2,000 views and stuff on his little ones he makes using CapCut. So I should employ him soon to help me, because I need to do more clips. So
he needs to help with the family business, man.
Down with the kids, honestly. Like, get him employed. So
somebody said deep state bastard.
Are they talking about my kids? Could well believe it. Absolutely, deep state bastards. So yeah, on that, if people, do you know what? If people want to check out my little boy's football thing, they can get in touch with me separately. I won't mention it. So as much as he loves his subscribers,
somebody's already telling you Celtic.
No, he's saying Celtic. It's Celtic. Remember, awful team. Horrible lot. I've got a lot of listeners who are Celtic fans. Anyway, sorry. So I've got 2 videos left here. I've got one which is a kind of clip trailer from American Alchemy with Tim Gallaudet discussing Atlantis, but I also, which is mental, and I've also got a Gary Nolan video, which is the latest in a series of, people are calling them the hostage videos.
Actually, you know what? The video from the Jesse documentary, the ones that he puts out on YouTube with music, those get flagged pretty quickly. So you might not want to show that one because it might get flagged quickly because of the music, not because of Jesse.
Scumbag. Well, essentially, he's got Tim Gallaudet, former Rear Admiral, on his podcast. I've not managed to watch it yet. I've been trying to catch up with a lot of stuff. But Tim Gallaudet is an interesting guy, because I think for a lot of folks, Tim Gallaudet's role in the UFO topic has been, he saw an email about the Tic Tac event, and he had no direct...
Go fast,
yeah, and had no direct involvement in it. But he is and Pavel, please correct me if I'm wrong here. His role in this and credibility is really down to how senior he was, where he was, and that he's even talking about this at all. It's not that he had some top secret access that we know about. He's kept very straight laced, hasn't he? And his book that's just come out, he's got a book out now, Admiral Gallaudet. I think it's called Holding Fast in Rough Seas or something like that. If people check it out. But it's all about leadership and stuff like that. It's not a UFO book. But he has stayed involved in the UFO topic. And I think it helps when he goes on the news. I think when people see former Rear Admiral, etc., etc., people see that and go, oh, wow, this guy's really senior. And he's talking about UFOs. So that has an impact. He's now at the point, he's on Jesse Michael's American Alchemy, talking about and slightly around the idea that he and some others, I don't believe he's gone into detail on how and where, but they believe they have found the location of what would tie up with being Atlantis, which is a wild step to the left or right, whichever. I'm not being political there, folks, but if you're walking along a path and you want to suddenly jump into the dog shit on the left-hand side of you, that's a wild swing away from where he's been. And we now have, and just think about it, imagine going back 10 years and saying you're going to have a rear admiral, a former rear admiral of the US Navy come out and say he's off on a search for Atlantis, but he thinks he's found it, and he is being deadly serious. That is where we are now with the UFO topic.
And that claim that people have claimed they know where Atlantis is, like that's a claim as old as time. Nobody really seems to have the exact documented, well evidenced location of the place. Just a lot of smoke in some cases, but in others it's just pure speculation. So I can't wait to see whatever evidence him and his team have to cough up. And I never imagined. I mean, Tom DeLonge was
location-wise. Do you know what's really interesting? This is my book, folks. Right, Atlas of Unidentified.
That's a Bermuda Triangle, isn't it?
Yeah. See,
it's somewhere
down,
in there.
Atlantis though. See down here.
Yeah,
it's not there. But that is my book, folks. Okay, Atlas of UFOs available in hardback.
You idiot.
Always have to get a plug-in. Always have to get a plug-in.
It's your show.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks. Our show. This one's our show. It's the people's show. So yeah, I just think that's mind-blowing. And I know someone said there he talked about it for about 3 minutes in amongst 3.5 hours of stuff, right? I feel Tim Gallaudet has perhaps a limited range of what he can talk about or even will talk about. Forget the Atlantis stuff. Most things he says is quite straight-laced around procedure, around politics of UFOs in the Navy, around the incident with the emails. And I think the email then went missing. It was deleted, wasn't it? And he was like, it wasn't him that done it. I don't think he goes much more out of that, but I think just his standing and probably connections and networking is something that's very valuable.
He is sort of involved in the investigation of the Bluegill Triple Prime alleged event that ties Harold Malmgren to it. He did a sort of like a paper, an investigation with Australian former intelligence community official Geoff Cruikshank, who has been on my show. He has been on News Nation as well. And they've looked into this one and they wrote quite an extensive sort of piece about it. I don't know if he's involved in more stuff like that he talks about, because he did talk about that in the American Alchemy episode. But in terms of like actual evidence, other than the researching stuff that he's doing, that's all he saw, as far as I know, the video. Yeah, right.
I imagine he's a good connection to have in amongst, as someone saying there, a one-star admiral ain't nothing to scoff at. If you want someone in amongst your group who's going to be well connected, who's going to know policy, procedure, who's going to be able to say, I'm trying to find X, Y, or Z, and he can say, well, do you know what? I can't give you that, but I can point you in the direction of a guy who knows a guy who knows. That's the kind of stuff I imagine he could be very, very useful with, and clearly a very intelligent guy as well. So I won't play that one, but I do have a video from Gary Nolan. And there is a little bit of Sol Foundation news about a new study that's coming out. I don't know if you've seen this, Pavel.
Yeah, they're asking for people's donations.
I knew you would go with that straight away.
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I? It's very straightforward. They're doing it actually. So it comes down to people's decision of whether they do it or not.
How do you feel about that? Because I've got the Sol thing here, right? So basically, they are looking to do a study, and they've said it's a study that's going to be led by epidemiologist, Dr. Christian Salazar, and Sol executive director and anthropologist Peter Scaffish. Now, Peter was on the podcast with me a couple of months ago. Really popular interview, really intelligent guy, really interesting way of framing and talking about. We talked about the beings quite a lot in what we done. And it says here it's going to help understand how Americans are likely to respond to different aspects of disclosure announcements, who delivers the news, what evidence is presented, how that evidence is verified, and how the message is framed. And then it goes into the study asks realistic disclosure scenarios compared. I won't read this all, but I'll give you the gist. Using a research method known as discrete choice experiment, a nationally representative sample of individuals would compare realistic disclosure scenarios. Why it matters, it's an evidence-based plan for disclosure. The study's findings can be used to develop an evidence-based plan to execute and communicate disclosure in ways that build public trust, ease fear, and safeguard well-being. And why now? Keeping pace with White House actions. It mentions the UAP Science Advisory Council, of which Gary Nolan, Tim Gallaudet, and Peter Scaffish are all part of that. And the study must launch quickly to keep pace with ongoing developments in DC. And it does then ask you to fund the study, make a gift now, any amount, any frequency. And there is also a have questions first, and you can submit a form before you submit anything. So it does say here, considering a gift but want to know more first, you're in good company. This is one of the most impactful projects Sol has undertaken, and we're glad to answer questions before you decide. So, yeah.
Yep. And I mean, if you read all this and you agree with what they're trying to do and you want to support them, by all means, I don't have a problem with this as much of a problem as I had with the whole leaving the fourth tier wide open to the public. That's a different, I think, situation. And these foundations work like that. A lot of them, they ask people for money, and that's how they operate because they're nonprofits. So yeah, if it's an interesting and a good development in terms of getting some type of evidence to support claims and stories, I think it's a good effort.
Yeah, and again, I think with anything like this, you don't have to donate. You can choose to, you can choose not to. I mean, I personally like a lot of the work the Sol Foundation's done. Their next symposium is now scheduled early next year in the spring.
In the East Coast of the US is going to be, right?
Yes.
Washington.
Yeah. So, but again, it's whenever anything like this comes up and asks for money, then it's always raises flags with some people. But there are a whole lot of people who are happy to support this kind of stuff. Listen, there's people that I just got an email from Stephen Greer's camp to say, because I've attended one of their 3-day sessions, lectures or something, bear in mind, I've attended none of Stephen Greer's stuff. So, I've been invited to a special retreat. I say invited, it's invited to pay. And it's thousands of dollars to go and summon UFOs with Stephen Greer.
Yeah.
Some people are really into that. I'm only
Seems
charging
like
$500.
an event for celebrities, right?
Or rich people, or people with that money to burn. They don't even have to be rich. I could go and spend that money because I'm a millionaire now, as people found out. So yeah, but yeah, it's each to their own. And if folks want to support that, Sol Foundation has it up on their website. They've posted lots of it. I'll probably try and reach out and get one of the guys on to kind of talk about that. Even if I can get even 10 or 15 minutes of Peter Scaffish's time, we could maybe even record that and then play it on one of the Monday shows, Pavel, as
that'd be nice.
Segment.
That'd be nice.
So let me reach out to Peter and see if we can arrange that. Again, that they're not shying away from from this kind of stuff. They won't be like, oh, let's not mention money. And to be fair, they've got the form and stuff. So there you go, folks. If you want to get involved, it does sound like something that would be valuable and worthwhile. Again, interesting that Gary, Peter, Tim are involved on the advisory council as well. So maybe get some funding themselves for that, maybe from the US government. Nah, is that not how that works?
I don't know how it works either. So I would only be speculating if I said anything about that.
To be fair, I've seen the US is $40 trillion in debt. They probably don't want to fund scientific studies. So yeah.
I mean, most of that money goes to defense. So
OnlyFans. My new pursuit when I'm selling feet pics. Anyway, so here's so those videos we mentioned. Yeah, I know, it's disgusting. Those videos we've mentioned in the last couple of weeks on the Doomer Show, on my show, on your show. From
James Fox?
From James Fox. And they've got David Grusch, Matthew Brown, Dylan Borland, Jeff Nicitelli, and now Gary Nolan. Excuse me if I've missed anyone out. And they're doing it. People are affectionately calling them the hostage videos because it's very much filmed. Eric Burleson's done one as well. That single person talking to the camera, pleading to President Trump to do the right thing in terms of the UFO topic, etc.
They should have given it a little drama and like do it in handcuffs or something like that. You know?
Do you know what they should have done it like? You know, like the whole Netflix documentary thing, which was a bit of a trend where, and then people are going to see my fat stomach here, but you know, like, are we ready? And done it like that, you know, that would have been good. If you're on the audio platforms, I've just done the whole standing up and sitting back down as if I'm being mic'd up and clipped in. But yeah, I've got Gary Nolan's video here, so let's play this. And James Fox is really good. He's not precious about this kind of stuff. I mean, I would never play James Fox's full documentary for free for people. However, he wants this stuff out there. He wants it to be shared. He wants people to share it. So this video is 4 minutes long, so we'll maybe pause halfway through, Pavel, and chat about it, okay? But this is Gary Nolan's video.
My name is Gary Nolan, and I'm a professor in the Department of Pathology at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Now, I need to say this up front. Although I'm a member of the White House UAP Science Advisory Council, advising the FBI, ODNI, the White House itself, and other groups within the government, I'm speaking here now personally and not on behalf of any group. First, I'm proud to have been involved in this area over the last 15 years, using my experience in cancer immunology to serve our country and military. Second, I'm also proud to have advised members of our government, even in a limited manner, over the years to advise them on how to bring rigorous science to the study of alleged UAP and non-human intelligence. Through the efforts of many, least of all me, we together have reached a critical juncture. I therefore want to applaud the White House and President Trump for opening the door to scientific progress in this area. It's truly a momentous turning point in history, but it requires further action for that potential to come to fruition. The truth is, the UAP are not yet a problem that science can solve. Why? Because science needs data, and no one has been given access to the data that hides behind redacted videos and security clearances that even our government has openly admitted having on anomalous objects. We, as a country, and I, as a scientist, am being denied access to the data or materials on potential evidence for non-human intelligence. That's extraordinary. Without addressing these barriers, as created by bureaucratic state and those groups or individuals who seek to block and obfuscate, the matter will continue to evade oversight from Congress and even the president. You are paying for something that you aren't told anything about.
Thoughts?
Well, I'm guessing that he's going to start, and I mean James Fox when I say he's going to start doing more with different personalities from this. It would be interesting to see if Dr. Jacques Vallée would agree to this, because we know that he already delivered one of these to James Fox when he did the National Press Club event. I think that people like Dr. Gary Nolan, who are like very much involved in this and have been for a while, it makes sense that they do a video like this. And to seemingly apply pressure. And it seems like because of the midterms, everybody seems in a hurry to do as much as they can to get Trump's attention. To this, you add the whole Ross Goldhart report on Trump already being aware of it and having his own alleged crash retrieval team, and then Burleson tweeting about this stuff, which seems to be the same thing according to Ross. So it's accelerating, and I guess that it was like Dr. Gary Nolan's turn to lift up his voice about it and speak directly to Trump.
So here's one for you. What are these videos doing that Age of Disclosure apparently didn't do already?
I don't know. Because you got to think about this. If Trump really is already aware and he's just doing whatever he wants, he must already have a plan that may or may not involve all of these people. But we won't know for sure until something actually happens, not just like reports from Ross or videos like this. If Trump does something really, I want to see that. But I don't know. I don't know what they do that Age of Disclosure already probably didn't do. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm intrigued to see who doesn't make a video like this. And I don't know if I should be or not, but I've put the comment on screen from Zinez, who said, I bet Lou Elizondo won't be making a video. What do you think about that? Is there anything in the people who don't decide to make one of these? Because I imagine James Fox.
I think James is good friends with Lou. They will do one. I would probably guarantee it,
What if he doesn't?
That would be interesting. I don't know.
Has that all gone quite quiet? The Elizondo Gerb Coulthard situation, that just went deadly quiet, didn't it?
They probably already talked in the background, but probably Ross and Lou, and they probably agreed to just stop. I don't want to mention other people that have been sort of involved in this whole thing because I don't think that we should give them any air, really. But there was a lot of like post Gerb versus Lou sort of confrontation activity that may have resulted in some cease and desist letters and stuff like that. And I'm not talking about Gerb or Lou specifically, but people like in the surrounding of the whole thing. And maybe that's why it got quiet as well. We talked about Ivan, for example, going off. That probably had an effect, and phone calls were made probably, and people were told to just stop,
It's amazing what happens as well when you just don't go on social media for a few days and you just don't see this stuff. And it's like, I think people probably assume folks like myself are always on X. I learned about 3 or 4 years ago, it's not conducive to a healthy lifestyle or experience to constantly sit online. If you can do it, fucking more power to you. But let's hear more from Gary.
Efforts to gain access to the needed data remain purely cosmetic, lacking the substance or the power needed to get at the core of this pressing issue. Okay then, so what's the path to a goal? Well, remember David Grusch and many other of the whistleblowers who have come forward? David Grusch, for instance, took an oath before Congress and, with confidence and extraordinary courage, testified under oath that he was tasked by the government and subsequently discovered that programs existed within the government and certain Department of War contractors that were hidden from public view and that had been set up for reverse engineering or examination of advanced craft whose origins was from some form of non-human intelligence, allegedly. I mean, that's an extraordinary statement to make under oath and at risk of your career and frankly going to jail. So one path forward might be David Grusch and whistleblowers like him who have the requisite institutional knowledge might be tasked to develop a coherent plan and to run the operations that overcome the obstacles, break down the doors. Why not give them the authority they need to break down the walls and finally get to the truth of this matter? They can help the administration develop a plan that fulfills President Trump's vision for transparency. After all, They were the ones who came forward with the information in the first place. Why filter it through secondary parties? David Grusch and the other whistleblowers understand intimately how to navigate the path created by the bureaucratic deep state actors who serve only themselves rather than the nation. Because brave men and women witnessed the problems firsthand, they should be the people directly tasked to bring this problem forward. I'm appealing directly to President Trump. Sir, please bring back David Grusch and other competent whistleblowers into government service at a level where they can support you and give them the necessary authority to bring this matter to whatever conclusion the evidence deserves as analyzed by science and the people. History will remember those who have the courage to act. It's time to be bold. Thank you for listening.
And again, this goes back to the midterms being right around the corner. And I do appreciate that this seems like it's like a concerted effort between as many as possible to get like Grusch and Borland and Matt to speak up and not get in trouble for doing so. But it also underlines the whole urgency thing, right? Because if there wasn't a sense of urgency going on, which I very much feel like there is, there's a lot of people within the movement that don't like Trump and don't like the idea that Trump is the one who's going to disclose. And I'm talking about people like at the very top involved in this that don't like Trump, but they're still going forward with this and appealing to Trump's ego and appealing to Trump, talking about legacy and all this stuff, despite not liking Trump and considering other people more apt to bring disclosure to the people. You got to think about that. That gives me a little bit of pause because there seems to be this urgency. And I don't know if it's because people are going to lose positions in government and the topic is going to be ignored afterwards if it happens, or if there is something really like pressing them to keep at it, you know?
Yeah. I know this whole thing about legacy and Trump will be remembered forever anyways, or at least modern times. Yeah, people, you don't know what the world will be like in 100 years' time, but given social media and video and all that kind of stuff, right, Trump is going to be remembered. So does he necessarily need or care about a legacy to do with UFOs? Of course, it would be defining for any president or leader to be the one who comes forward and says what they say. But do you not think Putin or Xi Jinping would care about that either? So why haven't they done it? Maybe they can't. I just don't think anyone at the top like that has the access or the real power to do it. And I think when they do, it opens up a can of worms. So I think more and more this whole thing about Trump's legacy, Trump's creating whatever the legacy is going to be for him anyway. So
yeah,
I think there's a little bit of like, remember when the first time Trump was in and when he was on his way out when Biden won the election and the Tiger King dude, Joe, what was his name?
Joe Exotic, is that it?
That's the one. How do I wanted to say Joe Murgia, and Joe Murgia will kill me for saying that, but
you
sorry,
just
Joe.
did.
Yeah, Joe, you are not the Tiger King. I'm sorry about that.
That's
Joe Murgia's a wonderful
funny.
researcher and chatter.
Joe is gonna love this.
I couldn't get Joe Murgia out of my
You're
head.
gonna get roasted by Joe later.
I am. He can DM me. Joe likes me.
Man. Yeah.
But yeah, Joe Exotic, remember there was the whole thing about Trump was going to pardon him on the way out, and Tiger King was huge at the time. COVID, obviously, Tiger King was the first thing on TV that went viral during COVID because everyone was stuck in, and all of a sudden it was like, what are we going to watch? So Tiger King just exploded. It was the right thing at the right time, and it went massive. And everyone was like, on his way out, Trump's going to pardon Joe Exotic. I could have sworn he would have done that, but he didn't. But that seems like the kind of thing Trump would do as let this guy out. He's a celebrity now. Let him go enjoy his life. And he didn't do it. So there's stuff that even Trump is like, I don't give a shit. If he cared, Trump would have been like, pardon him. It'll be funny. And I imagine even back then in the first term, Trump would be like, that's funny. Let's just do it. So again, Trump could have done this by now. This isn't being led by Trump. But like you say, I think there's a lot of people in his ear. Perhaps either way.
And I think that at this point, if we are trying to find out why they're in such a hurry before the midterms, there's also a possibility that we need to start trying to entertain, which is that Trump may not be the guy that does it, and we may have to wait until the next elections to get something potentially even done. Because if you take a look at the people from the administration who are currently have expressed any level of interest in the topic, there's like very powerful people who could have a run at the office when the time comes that are currently part of the administration. Those are obviously J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Both of them have been mentioned to be potential candidates. And I know that there's a lot of people that are going to scoff at that probably, but it's a possibility. There's a possibility that Trump just doesn't give a shit and he's not going to do anything unless it serves him in some way. And if he's been advised properly about this, he probably already knows that there is a jeopardy in place if he discloses anything that doesn't bode well for him, right?
Yeah. There's also, if we want to devil's advocate this, say that when it's not Trump in charge, that there's far less opportunity for this to come out as it is, and they may have to literally go back to the drawing board and start again, a la 2016, Tom DeLonge, Podesta, Hillary Clinton, ATIP, that crew, the Plan B guys that came forward.
And I remember this quote from Carl Nell that Matthew responded by saying, disclosure isn't dead, deep state disclosure is dead, and all that stuff. I think about Carl Nell, what made him say that at that specific point. He's like, oh, this process is over. On to the next, right? And Matthew was like, the fuck it is, I wonder if like this side from Carl Nell is already done for in terms of trying to seek out something. And the whole David Grusch, Matthew Brown, Dylan Borland, they're like, we got to keep going because this is all we got, really,
Yeah. Mr. Justin quoting one of your videos there,
I
Pavel,
didn't hear no bell. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I don't know on that. I know we've been on 2 hours, Pavel, which is a long time again for a show that I've got almost literally no notes for. Is quite exceptional. It might have been awful. Again, folks, if you hated it, remember to leave that like and comment. If you loved it, like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. If you liked it, go leave a like on my channel, and if you didn't like it, you can leave a dislike on Pavel's. That's probably the best way to. That's probably the best way.
Can we read some of the questions though? Because I think that there were some that were interesting though, and there's a lot of people that sent out.
I'll go through the starred stuff first, and then I've got stuff that listeners sent in. We might fire through really quickly if we're lucky. So thanks to everyone: Miko86, Kevin Cullen,
thank you,
David Unger, Digital Birthday, thank you for that stuff we read earlier. Andy is a CIA agent from FazeBeast. I think also I was accused of having a UFO under in my basement. I don't have a basement, which is the issue with that one. But thank you. Jez Taylor, did you see the Starlight satellites on the Liverpool Echo YouTube page? Funny as. No, but we do get a lot of that in the UK where Starlight satellites, and the same as in the US though, and other countries who see the SpaceX rockets and that flare that the engine does, and those always
looks really cool.
As UFOs. It does look really cool. People should know. Do you know the coolest Starlink satellite thing I saw was, and it still made me feel really uneasy, even though I knew what I was looking at. It was about 2.5 years ago, and I was driving on a winter's night to the gym. The road was closed that I normally go on, so I had to go like a long detour around. And I'm going on to like a stretch of dual carriageway, so like busy, fast road. And over to my right-hand side, really clear sky, stars and stuff in the sky. But I could see the Starlink, but usually it's up really high and going over in like that arch that it does. There was like 4 or 5 of them But imagine, the best way to put it, when you watch the beginning of Star Wars and the writing comes up, do, 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 do,
Yeah.
do, do,
Yep.
and it comes up at that weird angle. They were like that. They weren't even looking like they were moving, and it looked like a ladder through the sky. It looked, when I say 3D or 4D, it was so weird to see, and genuinely it was really unsettling, even though I know that Starlink satellites, loads of people reported it, but it was just however they were launched, released. We were moving on the Earth, they were moving. It looked like a ladder of Starlink, so proper weird, and I can see why people still report them. The David again, if you guys are grifters and I'm the king of Nebraska, thank you to David, who is the king of Nebraska. Dnitz said, must make Pavel a millionaire too. Pavel
Thank you,
doesn't
D.
need the money. And Mr. Justin had said, Andy, I'll send you the Lego, but you have to build it. I can arrange that.
His kids will build it. They will.
Yeah, my kids will build it with me. Rock Duck said, I hate that I like you guys so much because y'all are so weird. Keep up the strangeness. Thanks. Imagine
Thank you.
2026 people paying money to say that. This is kind of like OnlyFans. We're one stop away from removing our tops at this point. Andrew had asked this one earlier. What did Chris Ramsey show Richard Doty on his phone? So if people
I know
hadn't
this
seen
one.
this, 2 seconds, because people might not have seen what this is from. Chris Ramsey, Area 52, has just hosted, controversially for a lot of folks, Richard Doty on his show. Richard Doty, infamously or famously, may have been involved, or almost definitely was involved in a lot of misinformation, disinfo, psyop stuff that resulted in someone ending their own life, with him being directly involved in that person having issues, essentially, right? Chris Ramsey's hosted Rick Doty. More power to him. People can choose to watch it or not watch it, okay? However, during the interview, Doty's talking about beings and whatnot. Chris Ramsey shows him his phone. You can't really see his screen. And he says, did it look something like this? Or have you seen something like this? To which Doty removes his glasses and he's like, oh, wow, yeah. And that really got people talking. Now, we had Chris Ramsey join us on the Doomer Friday show we were all doing on Friday. And he said he kind of regrets showing that now. And I think he said that online as well, because it wasn't meant to be
Said
like
it on
a
X.
top secret. Yeah, it wasn't like a top secret photograph. It wasn't anything classified. He was just showing him an example of something, and people have really jumped on it. So do you want to add anything to that, Pavel?
Well, in that post on X, Chris Ramsey did say that this is part of an ongoing case of an alleged picture of a being that he decided to show to Rick Doty, but he regrets showing it because he thinks it was too early to show because the case is still ongoing and the picture hasn't been confirmed to be real. So that's what happened there.
What do you think on that? And we both like Chris. I've spoke to Chris a few times now.
I mean, I have an experience with this guy Fepo from Podcast Paranormal in Mexico. And I've been these types of people that have a lot of different subscribers. A lot of people reach out to them from like high positions of whether government or the military to show them stuff, right? So my experience with Fepo, for example, he has a lot of really weird stuff on his cell phone that he doesn't normally show anybody really, because it's just ongoing sort of cases that may be fake, may be real, but he hasn't corroborated them yet. I think that's the same case with Ramsey. And you can only imagine what type of stuff he has on his phone that people just share with him, So, yeah, he probably shouldn't have shown it because of that, because it's just not a confirmed case. And you're showing it to the master counter intel guy from the UFO community, right? He's like the guy. So I don't know what that did. And yeah, I agree with Chris. It was premature.
I'm always happy to see this stuff. People can make up their own mind. That's the way I've always viewed it. Mama Chola, 6889, 5 joules at a treat. Thank you. RockDoc4495 said, I have a master's in geology, mild flex. The earth is always changing. The oceans rise and fall all the time. Coming out of the recent ice age flooded the old coastlines underwater. There were most definitely cities buried. Yeah, I agree. Buried's a really hard word for me to say with my accent. So.
I have a question on X from experience for you, Andy. It says Davis mentioned different briefings he gave to agencies. Does anyone know what those briefings entailed, and why would those agencies need a briefing from Davis? Did they ask for him specifically? Did you ask him about that?
I don't know if they asked him specifically or if he was brought in. All I'll say is, and this is just to be fair to the whole scenario, Stephen Greer claims to brief people, but that can be he's handed a presentation to a staffer to say, give this to President Trump, and he'll say, I've briefed President Trump, or Trump is aware of this brief, right? Or it could literally be you've been brought into the office, like Bigelow, who clearly paid for some of Trump's time, can say he's briefed Trump. Trump never requested Bob Bigelow to come in, I don't think. You know, unless maybe someone said, you should listen to this guy. He's a big funder, donor, blah, blah, blah. Again, I'm not too sure on what any of these guys say. They could obviously speak differently due to clearances and whatnot, depending on who they're talking to. But nah, I'm not sure. And do you know what? I don't think I hold it too tightly anymore as a major deal that person X has briefed person Y or group Y, because you don't know. And I'll just use David Grusch going in and briefing a group of people that he's not saying essentially what he says to Congress, but you imagine he can go a little bit further. But that might mean he still has to stop at a certain point. I think people have an assumption that they spill all the beans, and I don't think that's what happens. It's just a case of bringing people up to speed. And no doubt in places they go a couple of steps further than they do publicly. But how much? We don't know. So, is that fair? If you want to do it off,
it is fair.
It probably works. Yeah, there you go.
It is fair.
Yeah, cool. Cosmic gave Jules thanks a few times. Chris Wilson gave 1,000 Jules. I think the Jules thing's just some kind of money thing. But thank you everyone who sent those in. Do you have any questions before I jump over to some listener ones over here?
No, let's go.
No, right. So I asked people on Patreon, and we'll fly through these, Pavel. Okay. To Patreon and YouTube. If you're a member of the podcast, thank you. YouTube's doing like a free month just now. I've not set that up. I don't know if Pavel has the same on his channel, but you can take advantage of memberships for that kind of stuff. But thank you to everyone. Amy says, a big question for me is, why are there any crashes at all? Are the majority malfunctions, shot down, or gifts?
According to reports, all of the above.
And the thing is, Grusch said we've got between 25 and 100 crash retrievals. It sounded like he talked about worldwide with that, as in that's how many we have as a species almost.
I think Davis also said that, right? That it's global.
Yeah. There's a number that he believes they're aware of. For me, in that number, I've got a gut feeling, purely gut feeling, folks. I don't have any contacts at Lego that let me know this. I reckon Grusch is getting at round about 40. And I'm landing on that purely because if I was going to give an estimation and not want to give it away, I would start somewhere. I'd be closer to the lower end than the high end, and I would exaggerate the high end to hide the number. So I'm going to land on, it's not 50, 60, 70, it's something about 40. 40, between 40 and 50 at most craft retrieved worldwide. And that's still a relatively low number when you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the whole, too big to move, which seems to be not just one thing that is around the world. So
yeah,
we should take that also into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike said, why does Eric Davis absolutely shit on Lazar every chance he gets? Dr. Davis is extremely smart, so it can't be there's some sort of jealousy. So why?
I'm going to give my opinion on this. I think that there's a possibility that a lot of the classified work that Dr. Eric Davis did back before 89 or so, there's a possibility that a lot of that overlaps with some of Bob's claims, and he, by NDA standards, I would guess that he would have to lie, And it's just like very from the gut sort of reaction that is really strange to me. And he had a similar reaction to Richard Banderick. I don't know if you remember this guy who came out on the Ecosystemic Futures podcast to talk about some of the materials that he allegedly handled. And Davis was the same. He's like, nope, he's a liar. He's lying. And it's like, really? That fast?
But do you think that can also just be natural human response and not believing someone? Like,
yeah, well,
Science Bob McGuire.
Yeah, yeah.
He posted on X today a clip from my interview and said Davis hasn't said this stuff before, and him and Davis worked on something at the same time and didn't know they both worked on it. So again, why can't it be possible that Lazar did do some of what he said, and Davis
wasn't aware? Yeah, it's entirely possible. Yeah, but why take that, instant sort of reaction of name calling, pathological liar, and all that? That still sort of doesn't compute for me a little bit.
I'm a big wrestling fan, and it just reminds me so much of whenever you watch. There's a famous incident where very quickly Hulk Hogan basically on a pay-per-view refused to lose, and a guy lay down for him, and there's a whole story around what happened afterwards, and Hogan left and someone gets sued, and they still argue about it now. So even 30 years nearly after the event, it's called the finger poke of doom, if anyone wants to look it up. Both sides still tell different stories. Are they both lying? Are they both telling the truth? Or is it something in between? And that's where I'm like, they were all involved in that. How can this still be a different story? Even after all this time, why hasn't just both sides went, this is actually what happened? And there's so many examples of that.
I saw a funny comment, just a joke, just so don't take it personal. Somebody said, this is called the bullshitter paradox. That's good.
That's probably aimed at you. No. I mean, when have I ever been offended at anything? But yeah, so again, funny. I think sometimes, like with the UFO topic, I try my very best to think that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I don't want to go all in on anyone. As much as you said earlier, Grusch is the thought leader right now for a lot of folks, and including me. I'm in okay, let's see what Grusch can do. But I always like to go, the truth is probably in the middle. And I include your Greer and all that kind of stuff in that as well. Ultra had put John Ramirez's report of taking a spin in a saucer to Pluto with the Greys is a worthy claim with watertight evidence. I struggle with that sort of stuff where someone's went to a local planet. And
I spoke to John on the show once, and I didn't ask him about the more outlandish sort of claims because I wanted to keep the conversation to where there could be actual data to discuss. And he had some really interesting comments to make about the crop circles. But yeah, when it comes to like him actually hitting a gray and shit like that, it's like, okay, I don't know what to think of it.
Yeah, I think with the stuff like that, I do the whole, I'll take it at face value, and I'm not going to disbelieve you or believe you outright, but I appreciate someone sharing their story. The same way, when I told you earlier about the Ferris wheel thing and what I saw, that's fine. People might think I'm making it up. Cool. That's fine. It is what I remember happening, and I've always remembered it that way. So yeah, it's just the topic though. Josh said, I've always been cautiously intrigued by the Mark McCandlish, Brad Sorensen story. Obviously, Pavel, you covered this very well earlier. It's no idea if it's true or not, but one of the bigger claims out there in UFO world, 3 reverse engineered crafts, 0 point energy, throw in how KJ Sorensen is about it, McCandlish supposed unaliving, and the mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of the filmmaker who was making their documentary, and you've got yourself a conspiracy stew. But obviously you covered that quite well earlier on, mate. So thanks, Josh. Andy said, it's got to be the claims that NHI have had contact with members of our government leaders. If this is true, the implications are massive. They can communicate with us. They understand our leadership structure. They care enough to respect that and keep it secret from us. I probably alluded to a little bit of that, what I said about the intent and Nordics, and if that indeed is the case, they have an understanding enough of our society and societies, because they're very different, to not directly come down. And it does make sense.
Yep, it does. But yeah, it would be the wildest thing to have some sort of confirmation that that happened. I would be scared if that's real. To be honest with you.
Another couple off Patreon. Ultra said that we are food or contain, exude a resource that the others desire. There are negotiated agreements with world governments on acceptable quotas of human snacks allowed to be spirited away, 411 style. And how do you pronounce this? It's not analogous. Analogous?
Yeah.
Analogous?
You got
Yeah,
it. You got it.
Analogous. That's going to get clipped. To an epic protection racket to keep the majority safe. Where do you sit on that? Because the missing 411 series, David Paulides, I've watched some of those. Quite interesting. I do think there are some leaps of logic where in these massive parks, some people do just go missing. And there will be bears, various animals and types. That will happen, right? But there is some really interesting stuff too. That much like the ocean, if you were going to hide stuff, then some of these national parks would be incredible ways to do it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of places in my country that are also very, let's call it enigmatic, because a lot of people go missing. There's a lot of stories surrounding it, a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding it. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. It's another one of those mysteries that may never be solved.
And Mark says UAP engineering by an advanced civilization would look like magic to us. The materials would be too alien for us to comprehend, or at least to some degree. And again, I think that's probably getting a little bit at the Bigelow comments with Knapp around having to manufacture certain things in space.
Yeah.
And the difference that would make. I think they know this. And it's not just as capable of doing it on the planet.
Yeah, agreed.
Which immediately makes, if they are reverse engineering stuff, you can't just do it in a hangar. You would literally have to be in orbit. Then you can't do it on the space station. So you would have to have another place or way to do it. And that would be a, secret space program stuff.
Yeah, I would guess. And, that whole secret space program has been riddled with disinformation for many years.
And I am going to fly through a couple of the YouTube comments here, Pavel, and I'm going to ask you to give me literally a couple of words on each one, okay?
Okay.
So Michael said, one of the biggest claims is that of hybridization and that hybrids are living amongst us. How credible is that for you? Hybrids living amongst us.
5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. I'm going to go 8 or 9 out of 10, but it's not just as simple as Nordics walking about dressed like us.
Yeah.
Sorksen said direct contact between governments and NHI in the form of a physical meeting. Let's go out of 10 again.
6 out of 10.
I'm going to go 5 on that one. I'm going to go and again, that goes back to Holloman and did that happen? And again, if you want to talk smoking gun, if that footage is there, that's the kind of shit you could release that would be incredibly interesting. Even from a distance, even a blurry video from a distance. The claim disclosure is coming.
5 out of 10 again.
I'm going to go 2 or 3, but confirmation perhaps maybe 7 or 8. The idea of a soul farm from Ginger Hipster.
7 out of 10.
7. People in the comments should play along with this one here. Send us in your votes. Just type the number, folks. All helps with the algorithm. Paul, when it comes to crash retrieval and reverse engineering, we should be more focused on the companies behind it. Rather than pushing it with a disclosure narrative, we should be asking the hard questions of places like Lockheed and others. I think treating disclosure and reverse engineering as separate subjects would be a start.
That's not a bad idea. I would add that we would need to also establish lines of communication with the people who are experiencing stuff on a daily basis in their lives. That's also an important data point besides just the reverse engineering claims and the crash retrievals and all that stuff, which is fair. Like, people want to look into that too, but I think that a lot of those experiences should also be explored.
Yeah. Again, though, I think if you go down the confirmation route, you don't have to talk about reverse engineering and having craft necessarily straight away. You can confirm that we believe we're being contacted or observed by another intelligence. You know, you don't have to then say, and we've got some of the craft locked away. You can do that in different ways. What Terence said, hey Andy and Pavel, love both pods. Love Andy's a little bit more. I added that last bit in. What about the claims of possession of alien bodies is the biggest, so show us or shut up. How important is that?
Show us or shut up. I like that.
Yeah.
It is important. It's the most important,
yeah.
I think.
And there was a couple more folks, but I'll just be sitting here reading all night, and we're almost at 2.5 hours now. So I think, Pavel, we should start wrapping up at this point because it is a late one here. And this has been enjoyable. Good to get some of this stuff off our chests.
Yep. As always, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
What have you got coming up on the Psychoactivo podcast schedule?
I'm going to speak to Mr. Reese Dalton Morgan this week, the UFOs, and we're going to talk about this document that from the 70s that David Grusch mentioned, amongst other things that are very interesting to me, like Reese's family history with the topic, which is very, very interesting, and everything that's been going on over there in Australia, which I'm not very familiar with, and he's going to try and put us up to speed a little bit more.
Awesome. I've got people here asking what's the book behind me. It is Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects, folks. Thank you if you picked up a copy. I don't know how many times I can flog that joke to death now at this point, but I appreciate it. The audiobook is coming out next year. I just have to record it still. I am doing it genuinely due to public demand. And the paperback is also out next year.
Can you do two versions, one with your accent, another one with the American accent that you did the other day?
I could do one with your accent.
Fuck that.
Would that be highly inappropriate?
No.
I would just sound like Eddie Guerrero from early 2000s WWF. That would be my accent. This week for me, I've got that big one with Danny Sheen tomorrow, which is going to be a new series for members only. It's going to happen monthly with different guests and with different topics. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got a few guests lined up for the coming weeks. But they go into early September because I've got a week where I'm going away in mid-September. So I've got Michael Shermer, Diana Pasulka, and a few other folks coming on as well. Nice. I look forward to hearing from Reese Dalton Morgan. I've meant to have Reese on the podcast before. So I'll let him do yours and I'll pick up the pieces afterwards. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Reese is a really nice guy. Got to speak to him a few times. And there will be some shows this week. I'm going to ask you, final question, Pavel. Are we getting a UFO files drop on Friday?
Oh, I have no idea. I haven't looked into it.
I think we will.
You think so? Do you got any educated guess on that? Is that?
I've got a calendar and we're due one.
We are. Man,
if we don't get one, this will be the longest I think between drops since it started.
Yeah. I hope that there's a follow-up of the whole ODNI and FBI report that allegedly happened in December or November 2025. And I hope that we get more information on whatever Ross has been reporting on with Trump allegedly being already involved in this stuff fully. They haven't denied any of Ross's claims, which is already pretty significant to me.
Who hasn't?
He specifically talked about the administration and Skywatcher and the Trump cabinet, and none of these people have taken the time to either confirm nor deny. It's one of the wildest claims I've heard from Ross, and that is saying something, bro, especially recently. So, and we haven't, it must have been by this point, it's been almost a month since he made that claim and that report, and nobody has come out. The people who are asking, like Arrow, the Department of War, via emails, they've gotten crickets so far. Like nobody has answered. So that's, I think, should be noted. It's significant.
Cool. I don't always think that lack of denial in the UFO space means there's something there. That's just a personal thing. And quite often when journalists reach out to any of these organizations, especially Susan Goff, and ask for a comment and they say, we can not confirm or deny, people jump on that. And it's like, I imagine they're just sitting going, can Pavel again?
Sue may have well answered that in some of the emails that she's gotten.
Oh, Sue, Pavel, answered. Sue.
Yeah, we're on a friendly basis now.
Awfully personal.
I don't even know her, and I've never ever sent her an email, but I know a lot of people who have. And this specific question, she has not responding. She has not responded even that. Like she hasn't responded at all, which is telling because she always responds to emails.
We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, lots of good stuff to come. Appreciate everyone. And I would just ask one more time, folks, if you've enjoyed this, my arse is killing me. Leave a like, leave a comment, say where you're from, anything in the videos. Do it on Pavel's channel and on mine. It makes a difference. And I've said so many times, look at some of these fucking idiots my kids watch on YouTube who get millions of views in a couple of hours for running about with supermodels, fancy Lamborghinis, and smacking each other in the face with cream pies, right? If cream pies are what you want, then Pavel and I will do that. But we want to keep this to journalism.
Clip that.
Yeah. I don't know what you mean. Journalism, UFOs, and keeping it on topic. So a like takes you 2 seconds. A comment will take you another couple of seconds. And if you're listening to this or watching this afterwards, you can hype and review. All of that makes a massive difference to us, and we just appreciate you watching as well. So leave a comment or even leave a question for next week's show, and we'll go in and get those two for the next one. So I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And I'll see you next week on my feed first. I'll be doing the hosting this time. Equally chaotic, always, you know.
Far more clips and better prepared, yeah. And I can just sit back and enjoy next week's.
You know, I think that you prepare way better than me in terms of notes and all that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So I think it's way more structured what you do than what I do. But yeah.
Well, final question, Pavel. What's cool and hangs up?
Oh man, I feel like this is some kind of double entendre.